gears to the NBA. The trade deadline was today. Now, at the time of this recording, it was done Thursday night. First trade, Nikola Vucevic. He gets sent to the Chicago Bulls for, I believe it was Wendell Carter, Otto Porter, and 2 first-round picks. What do you think about that trade?
Finally, the Bulls get Zach LaVine some help and an all-star talent. I think Vucevic is probably having the best year of his career right here. He's a great at shooting the three, good rebounder, and he's honestly one of the best passing bigs in the league as well. So that's a huge pickup for them. The other thing I was impressed with for them is getting Tice, because Tice is underrated, and the Celtics kind of have Robert Williams and Tristan Thompson already, so they got him added depth to their bigs. And honestly, I think the Bulls should be a playoff team this year. If they're not, I'm gonna be a little disappointed, but they should be a playoff team with LaVine and Vucevic heading them and leading them in the right direction.
Well, they clearly have a chance because, the Eastern Conference is not very good, except for the 3 teams between, or of course, it's Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. After that, it's pretty low. But yeah, they're the second team out right now, but I think they're only half a game out. So there's still a chance for them to even make a 4 or 5 seed, which would be crazy. And of course, Vucevic, very underrated big man. Of course, it's probably because he played in Orlando for such a long time. But I mean, he's a 3-time All-Star. He's going to be very good. I think he's going to be a great fit with Zach LaVine and a few of the other guys. Another move that happened, Victor Oladipo is once again on the move again. He's sent to the Victor Oladipo sent to the Miami Heat in exchange for Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley. You're a Heat fan. Are you pretty excited about this?
I am, because I didn't think it was going to happen. It happened after the deadline. They must have still been on a call or something like that. Maybe even Kendrick Nunn. Didn't give up any of those guys. They were Avery Bradley, who hasn't played in at least a month, and then Kelly Olynyk, who's, he's replaceable, because we traded for Bielitsa, I believe, to replace him as well. So it's really good work for Pat Riley. He kind of out mastermind the Houston Rockets GM. It's just a really good move, and we kind of fleeced them, to be honest with you.
Do you think Oladipo re-signs with you guys once the season ends?
I think it's still up in the air, because Oladipo hasn't been playing his best basketball. In the last 5 games, he's definitely picked it up, but he hasn't been playing his best basketball. Part of that's because he's coming back from injury, and then obviously got traded to Houston, which that was just a dumpster fire from the start. But I could definitely see him re-signing. He definitely wants to be in Miami. He said it multiple times. I think at some point he went up after a Pacers game when he was on the Pacers and was like, Jimmy, I'm going to come play with you or something like that, and was definitely excited to be in Miami. It kind of depends. I've heard another free agent that could opt out of their contract is Kawhi Leonard. So if Kawhi Leonard's available, the Heat could go after him, and I definitely prioritize him over Oladipo.
Yeah, and like Oladipo, I think what he's turned down 2 offers, one from the Pacers and one from the Rockets. So, I mean, I feel like he wants a pretty big market. Miami has that. And of course, Oladipo, very underrated guy, 2-time All-Star. I think the move is it's a really good move by Pat Riley. And I think the Heat, it's just crazy how the Heat haven't been able to hit their stride just yet, but there's still a lot of the season left to play. And with how good the Heat were last season, I could see them doing the same thing. Alrighty, so another player that was not traded that I thought was going to be traded or moved was Kyle Lowry. He currently is still with the Toronto Raptors. Did you expect him getting traded, and were you a little shocked that he wasn't?
Yeah, I was a little surprised that he wasn't traded, because of Drake showing FaceTiming during the press conference, and they were doing the most to kind of give him a good send off. All the fans were just banking on that last game last night being the one that the last time he puts on the Raptors jersey, and obviously he's going to be a legend in their book. But the problem, I think, started when Masai, their GM, was asking for a little bit too much from the Heat. I think he wanted Tyler Hero, and when you're trading a 20-year-old with obviously a good high upside for a 34-year-old, that's not exactly ideal for the Heat. And then he wanted Thibault and Maxey from the Sixers, and that's a big haul from the Sixers as well. So it came down to him wanting too much, and then obviously the uncertainty with him being on the final year of his contract and not knowing whether he'd sign an extension with a contender or not.
Yeah, I thought Kyle Lowry was out the door as well, and I thought another team that would be intriguing, I'm not sure they had enough to trade for him, but was the LA Clippers. They clearly need a point guard. Kawhi Leonard wants one, and with Patrick Beverley not being the best and Lou Williams being more of a bench guy, and especially with the Clippers having 2 of the former Raptors guys that won the championship with Kawhi Leonard and Serge Ibaka, I thought that would have really looked good. I just didn't know if they had enough. And we'll see what ends up happening. Do you think Kyle Lowry stays with the Raptors after this offseason?
I think it's likely that he might because I think he wants to retire a Raptor, and it's the point of him getting traded right now is because they're not really contenders. I think if they try to retool and get the roster looking like a contender in the East, maybe he stays. But there'll definitely be a ton of offers from contenders. And then to add on to your Clippers point, I think they got Rajon Rondo, and traded Lou Williams, which should help them out a little bit at point guard. But I could definitely sell him going there or to the Lakers. They were trying to get him and add in Dennis Schroeder for him, which I think that was probably one of their best offers right there.
Yeah, I mean, it really did. I think it. Whoever Kyle Lowry went to, he would have been a huge help, and he's a very underrated point guard. And I think Kyle Lowry is one of the greatest Raptors of all time, just because he's been around for a while. But I'm hoping Kyle Lowry's with another contender because I feel like he's such a good player and he deserves at least two championships. His former teammate DeMar DeRozan with the Spurs now, it was reported that he might be traded. He's not traded. He's still with the Spurs. I don't know if he's a free agent this year or next year, but I know he might not be a Spur for a little bit. I thought he might be traded. Were you a little shocked that he wasn't on the move today?
Yeah, I think the market was a little bit smaller for him because of his the fact that he's a little bit less conventional or guard now in the NBA because he's not a great 3-point shooter and stuff like that. So he doesn't fit perfectly with contenders, but definitely a really good defender. And he performed like an all-star this year. He could have got an all-star uh, appearance for sure. Um, I think he will remain with the Spurs. I don't think he gets bought out or anything like that, probably. And one thing I want to see, I think a lot of fans want to see, is him and Kyle Lowry team up one more time, whether that's in San Antonio or Toronto or somewhere else, because they were just such a good duo, and they're obviously like probably best friends in the league. So that's something I do want to see with those two before they retire.
Yeah, and it seems like the last few years, DeMar DeRozan has been in trade talks, and it seems like the Spurs just don't want to quite make that move. And, we'll see when it ends up happening with DeRozan, but he was a lot better in Toronto, I'll say. But I feel like he's a better player than people give him credit for just because he's not the best shooter from beyond the 3-point line. I think he's very underrated, and I believe DeRozan is one of the I don't know where he ranks in the NBA, but I think he's definitely one of the most underrated players. LaMarcus Aldridge is now going to get bought up by the Spurs. The Spurs weren't able to find a trade partner. It looks like the Miami Heat are the front runner. Where do you think the former number 2 overall pick lands?
So I would say the Heat, and that's not even being biased as a Heat fan, but I would probably say the Heat. They look like the front runners. I'm trying to think other teams that could be in the market for him. Really, any other contender is going to meet with him. I think two, 3 more teams might meet with him before he even decides to come to the Heat. And it's the same thing that happened with him when he was first a free agent, when he was in his prime. He met with like 5 different teams because he wants to like weigh his options. So he's a smart player, and he's officially bought out. So he'll definitely be finding a new team. The thing is, if he joins the Heat, I don't know whether he starts or not because obviously he's up there in age and he's not in his prime by any means. So he might just be getting some key bench minutes or fourth quarter minutes or something like that, but could definitely make a big difference.
Yeah, LaMarcus Aldridge is one of the better players. Of course, when he went to the Spurs, he was pretty good his first few years, but it seems like the last 2 years, he hasn't been the same. He's getting older, and I feel like he wants to start ring chasing, and I'm not really sure if San Antonio would be the greatest place because I think they're good. They're just not great. I think the Spurs are just still a few years away from winning a championship. Aaron Gordon, there was no really news about him. I thought he was out of Orlando. Do you know if he got bought out today or not?
He got traded to Denver, I believe. Traded to Denver for Gary Harris, R.J. Hampton, and either a first or second, something like that.
Okay, yeah. I didn't hear anything about that, but I knew he was on the move, and I think he was done with Orlando. So that's good news. How well do you think he does in his first year with Denver?
I think that's a good pickup for Denver. I don't know what Aaron Gordon's contract looks like, and if it's multiple years, I think that it's actually a really good pickup for them because Aaron Gordon's only 24 years old, even though it seems like he's been in the league for like 10 years. I think he's been in the league since he's 19. So it's one of those players where he gets in the league real early and something like that. And we haven't really seen the full potential of Aaron Gordon because he's been on Orlando. He's kind of been, capped talent wise with his rosters. We obviously know he's a great dunker, really athletic, but we want to see him like take the next step in his game. And I feel like he'd do that with Denver and the talent around him.
Speaking of Denver, Denver really hasn't had the best season this year, and I think eventually once I think the chemistry gets better. I think this team's gonna be a lot better. And plus, we still got lots of NBA season left to go. Do you think Denver climbs up in the in the standings in the Western Conference?
There's definitely room. The Lakers with their two injuries, LeBron and AD out, I think they're gonna fall. I don't know where they'll end up. They'll make the playoffs, and obviously LeBron and AD will be one of the best teams in the playoffs when they both come back. But for now, they're definitely gonna fall in the standings. See, the problem with Denver, I think, is Jamal Murray. He's just not consistent enough at point guard. In the bubble, he was an absolute killer. He had like a 50-point game in one of their series. I know that, but it's really just Jokic, and then Jokic tries to make everyone else around him better, and they just facilitate through him. Definitely a really talented roster, one of the deepest in the league. They just have to get more consistent and kind of get that chemistry going again.
Yeah, imagine if the Jazz or the Suns end up getting the top seed and the Lakers somehow fall to the 7th or 8th seed and LeBron and Davis come back right as the playoffs start. I mean, that's got to stink if you're a top seed or number one or number two, especially with how good the Jazz and Suns have had this year. Speaking of the Jazz and Suns, how do you think they've been able to do so well this year?
The Jazz, they just have a well-rounded roster. No one's really the main guy. Obviously, they have Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, a great defender, and probably going to win DPOY again. Um, they just have a real well-rounded roster. When you look at Bogdanovich, Ingles, and Jordan Clarkson, who probably win Sixth Man of the Year, he's really rejuvenated his career since leaving the Lakers. Like the Lakers, it was tough running, and obviously, anything you do in a bigger market, it's going to get a bunch of attention. So I feel like he's playing more freely off the bench for the Jazz and making a big difference. And then Mike Conley is playing real well too. So their team is it's one of the deepest. Them and the Nuggets, really deep teams. And then the Suns, obviously CP3 has made the biggest difference. They were already picking it up towards the end of last year. They went 8-0 in the bubble. That plus the addition of CP3, they look like a really good team. But definitely would not want either of them playing the Lakers with a healthy AD or LeBron off the rip in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be a crazy postseason. Some other guys that I thought would have been traded. Lonzo Ball is currently still a Pelican. I thought he was going to be on the move. A lot of people were saying the Clippers. A lot of people were saying the Warriors. Do you think, with Lonzo still being a Pelican, do you think his future is in New Orleans or somewhere else?
I think they definitely expect him to resign because if they definitely had a feeling that he wasn't going to resign, they would have got rid of him. His market value is going to be pretty high. He's definitely played well this year, and he's gotten a lot better from three since he's fixed his shot out of college. He used to do the whole thing where he brings the ball back across his body. Now it's definitely a more efficient shot. He's gotten better from three. Probably, I think he's shooting around 40%, which is really good for him. And obviously he's a really good defender as well, a good facilitator. So his market value is going to be high. I think the Pelicans would have traded him if they didn't think he's going to come back. So they're definitely going to make a run at him. But I don't know if he stays with New Orleans because right now they don't look like contenders in the West, in my opinion. And even with Zion and Brandon Ingram, they're still missing a piece. I'm not really sure what it is because that roster on paper should be a contending roster, but it's just not.
I think the Pelicans, their problem is like the Nuggets, the inconsistency, and I think they're really young, and that doesn't really necessarily help. But Brandon Ingram and Brandon Ingram and Zion definitely carry that team, I think, especially with them blowing out the Lakers a few nights ago. So yeah, I do like the Pelicans. In a few years, I just can't really see them doing much these next few seasons. I think they need to bring in a veteran, a guy who's been around, like similar guy to Chris Paul. And of course, they're probably not going to bring back Chris Paul, but I think they need someone like that to be able to go or get to the next level. Do you think Lonzo maybe lands with the Hornets this offseason with his brother?
I would think so if they didn't play the same position, and also the Hornets already have Terry Rozier, so I don't know if they're going to force that. And obviously, the GMs have to make the best decision for us, even though the fans would love to see the Ball brothers play together. Why not just throw LiAngelo on the team as well? Get him out of, I think he's in the G League or playing overseas. Throw him in there as well. But that's probably a long shot. And they're not really contenders right now, and they're kind of a long way from that as well.
Well, it's been really shocking with how well Terry Rozier has been playing. I think we all laughed at that contract he made 2 off seasons ago, but he's really, in my opinion, he's earned it. And he's probably going to get another pay raise if the Hornets are willing to keep him. So we'll keep an eye on that. John Wall, it seemed like they were working on a buyout. I don't think it's going to end up happening. But do you think John Wall leaves the Rockets? And if he does, where do you think he lands?
Yeah, the thing is with the Rockets, they kind of are a sinking ship right now. So I don't know if John Wall stays for that, nor do I think he's like good enough to be able to like, attract more stars to come to him. So I think they're in a rebuilding process for probably the next 3-4 years until they can get their draft capital and be able to actually see the benefits of all the picks that they've gathered. But other places for John Wall, probably somewhere in the East that needs a point guard. I don't know if there's room in the West, and obviously he would do better in the East, in my opinion. He would be able to maybe lead a team to a late seed in the playoffs because in the West it's just really competitive, and I don't see John Wall being a star that can be the number 1 or 2 option on a team and be able to be contenders.
I feel like the Lakers would try to make a run at John Wall if he was bought out. I think they like Dennis Schroeder, but I think they still want to upgrade that position. It seems like the Lakers are trying to upgrade a position almost every anytime a trade happens or any player. I think they feel like they're trying to continue to add to that position. Montrezl Harrell, another Laker, there was reports that he was on the move. Do you think he gets traded, or actually, I think is he a free agent after the season? I can't remember if he is or
He
not.
might be. He might have signed a 2 year. He might have signed a 2 year, 1 or 2 year with the Lakers. But yeah, I'm not sure. He was a 6 man of the year candidate last year, but definitely dropped off a little bit this year. They thought he was going to produce more with Marc Gasol.
Do you think could you see a scenario where he's not a Laker after this season's over?
Yeah, him and Dennis Schroeder are like the biggest pieces for the Lakers that could trade and try to get another star. Him and Taylor Horton Tucker. I think Horton Tucker and him were involved in trade talks to the Raptors actually for Kyle Lowry, but they didn't want to move Taylor Horton Tucker. They're really high on him, and he's a talented player, but definitely not there yet. He's got a lot of tools that he can grow his skill set with. So definitely could get traded in the offseason. I could see Harrell on a different team, but other than that, probably a Laker until his contract's up, whether that be a 2 year or if he's gone this year.
Another big thing that's happening, or that this year that we can't really seem who's going to be it. MVP right now. Who do you like as the league MVP? Because it seems like every time someone's a front runner, they get hurt or they're not as effective. It was LeBron for a while. He's out now. It was Joel Embiid. He's out now. Who do you think the front runner for the league MVP is?
Uh, Probably Jokic. He's leading the Nuggets in like every major statistic category. The only problem is the record's not up there, right? You would want to choose someone from the Jazz, but there's such a team effort. No one's really standing out and carrying that squad. So I would go Jokic. If I had to pick someone in the East, it might be Giannis again. But then again, voter fatigue. Giannis is having a great year this year, MVP caliber year, but the voters just don't like voting people 3 years in a row. And we kind of saw that with LeBron and basically anyone in history. Once you get voted twice in a row, it's kind of like, all right, moving on to the next guy. And it happened with Steph as well. So I would pick Giannis and from the East or Jokic from the West, but Jokic is definitely the favorite.
I know this is kind of an unpopular opinion, but I feel like James Harden right now has a case to be MVP. And yeah, he quit on his team basically, but what he's done in Brooklyn has been absolutely amazing. They still have Kevin Durant, and the Nets are still one of the top teams. So I feel like he could be a quiet MVP, quiet MVP talk. I do like Jokic, but I think it's because they have such a low seed and they need to become, I think, at least a fifth seed for him to be really in the consideration. I think Luka has a great, has deserves to be in there, but again, his team isn't really that great. So it's been really weird this year because I don't think there's really a unanimous MVP like we've seen the last few years, but it's definitely gonna be fun and exciting. Before we end the conversation, who do you like in the finals and who do you like taking the championship this year?
Right now, I can't pick against the Nets with KD coming back, Harden, and then Kyrie. I think their biggest piece though is Joe Harris. Joe Harris is probably the best 3 point shooter in the league right now, shooting almost 50%. And in the playoffs, he's gonna hit some clutch shots. And they're not great defensively, but they can definitely buckle down and get some stops. And when they need to, and they're going to score probably 120, 130 points per game against anybody. And it's going to be hard to clamp that down. I know the Heat are trying to like build a defensive roster where they can guard on the perimeter and the paint, but it's really hard to stop that because you can guard KD all you want. He's going to get his shots up. Kyrie, one of the best ball handlers in the league, he's going to get his. And then James Harden taking the point guard role for them and averaging like 11 assists. They're really a well-rounded team, and they're playing unselfish basketball right now.
Who do you like in the West right now?
Uh, Honestly, with a healthy Lakers team, I would choose them. But right now, I'm kind of torn between the Clippers and the Jazz. I think the Jazz could definitely make some noise in the playoffs, and they're going to be hungry after they lost to the Nuggets. I think they gave up a 3-1 lead against the Nuggets, and then obviously Mike Conley missed that one shot that was in and out. So they're definitely hungry, and they are going to be front runners for it. I can't pick against the LA teams though. I think it's going to be one of them. Right now, since the Lakers aren't healthy, I would say the Clippers, Paul George and Kawhi, they got something improved. They're a really good duo. And then adding Rajon Rondo, who was big for the Lakers last year in the playoffs, he'll get some good bench minutes, if not start for them in the playoffs. So I think they're a good, well-rounded team, and they're making some strides to be the top team in the West.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think I like the Nets and Clippers. Now the Bucks, I feel like the Bucks can make some noise if Giannis can learn to be able to do more than just drive it and be able to kick it out and his teammates to play really well. And Drew Holiday, of course, has to be 100%. But I do think the Nets are going to be very hard to beat. And I feel like the Clippers will eventually, their chemistry will they'll finally get their chemistry set up before the postseason starts. And I feel like, especially if LeBron and Davis aren't healthy, I feel like it's the Clippers to lose. Um, I'll let you go, can you tell us more about your column and how is it going right now?
Yeah, so on Last Words on Sports, in the baseball section, I write about the Cubs a lot, big Cubs fan, and baseball starting up within the week. So make sure you guys check out that content if you want. I'm starting a season preview piece right now, working on that. Also have a TikTok account that I do sports content on. Got like around 30K followers on there. So if you guys want to check that out, go ahead. And I post funny content, sports content, and then just kind of give my opinions on everything. So if you guys want to check that out, you can do that as well.
All right, don't forget to check him out. I'll put a link in the description for all his information. And again, thanks for coming on, Noah, and have a wonderful night.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the left. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click on the right.